for the executives of Hanmi Semiconductor, as well as any executive out there who wants to learn from this web series, you can look at this slide and you would see that I have created an enterprise architecture framework. It's a scalable operating model that turns strategy into execution and increases long-term enterprise value. What does it mean? These are big words and there are so many icons and the infographic looks professional, but what does it mean? We talked about 5 threats. Then we talked about potential market strategy to mitigate those threats, to mitigate those risks. And I provided 5 pillars for it, right? Then we looked into Hanmi's existing supply chain, and then I proposed potential supplier relationships to draw a new supply chain architecture that would actually mitigate the threats, mitigate the 5 threats. And then I'm now proposing an enterprise architecture framework, which will bind the entire supply chain architecture together and make the organization, make Hanmi Semiconductor extremely valuable for investors, extremely attractive for the mergers and acquisition leaders, extremely valuable for the stock market even. What's the enterprise architecture? It's the overall operating model, how information should pass from one point to the other. Why is it important? It's important because good operating system that is designed for the future will ultimately propel and accelerate and extract maximum value out of the supply chain architecture for the future. And that will ultimately mitigate all the risks, and that will pacify the threats. And that's why the enterprise architecture framework is so important. And that is why the enterprise architecture framework comes after the supply chain architecture is fixed. And supply chain architecture comes after you have recognized all the threats. You have recognized all the risks. You see how it goes? And if you just go and build an enterprise architecture, let's say you introduce tools like Jira or Plan View, it's just operational. It's just people doing what they have been doing for the last 10 or 20 years. They're not moving towards a direction. In order for you as an executive to truly lead your organization, you have to start with the threats first. Your risks and your threats, your competitor landscape. Of course, you know that. But are you doing it? Are you connecting end to end? Are you creating a supply chain architecture around your company? Are you building strategic partnerships? Are you dependent on only one client? Are you looking for the future, for 20 years ahead? These are the questions that can be answered when you sit down with a consultant like yours truly. Sit down with me. Let's talk about your aspirations. I want to listen what you have done already. And I want to help you. I want to be a liaison for you. I want to go to different customers with you, your customers. I want to present our plan. I want to make my plan our plan. I want to be a liaison for you for connecting with European manufacturers and Middle Eastern investors. That's what I am here for. All right, let's get back to the slide, shall we? Up to this point, we have discussed strategic threats, future opportunities, technology partnerships, manufacturing intelligence, and an ecosystem leadership itself. But there is an important reality that every executive team eventually faces. A strategy is only valuable if the organization is capable of executing. Often executives take certain decisions which program directors receive, head of engineering receive. But the organization is not there yet, executed. It's not about hiring smart engineers. It's not about hiring young people. It's about have you enable them with the right tools and the right information flow to work for you, execute your vision. Have you enabled them? And that's what architecture is all about. That's what enterprise architecture framework is all about. If Hanmi decides to pursue some of the strategic directions that we have discussed, which is advanced packaging leadership, manufacturing intelligence, ecosystem integration, recurring digital revenue, and global innovation partnerships, then the organization itself must evolve. This slide illustrates one possible enterprise architecture framework that aligns the operating model with those future strategic ambitions. Let's start from the top, shall we? The vision is straightforward. To become the intelligence layer of advanced packaging and ultimately a global packaging ecosystem leader, once that vision is established, the organization needs a set of strategic capabilities that support it. What are these capabilities? Capabilities are nothing but skill sets of people. These are people. These are human resources. These capabilities include packaging innovation, manufacturing intelligence, global technology partnerships, company value optimization, and ecosystem platform development. Notice that these are not products. They're organizational capabilities. They are skill sets of people you hire and hire for a strategic purpose, not simply because they are smart, not simply because they are intelligent. Capabilities survive product cycles. Capabilities survive technology transitions. Capabilities are what investors ultimately pay for. They are assets. The second layer focuses on value streams. This is how strategy is converted into repeatable business value. The first value stream transforms market opportunities into products. The second transforms supplier innovation into product innovation. The third transforms installed equipment into recurring value through services, optimization, upgrades, and intelligence. This is particularly important because it moves Hanmi from a one-time transaction model towards a long-term customer value model. The third layer is what system engineers would recognize as the digital thread. Information flows continuously from market insights to system concepts, requirements, design verification, manufacturing, and customer feedback. Instead of departments working independently, the entire innovation cycle becomes connected. Customer feedback from today's machine directly influences tomorrow's product roadmap. The fourth layer is knowledge architecture. You need this. Many companies do not add enough value on the knowledge architecture. They think, okay, we have hired people. If we retain them, the knowledge is intact. I completely disagree. I have worked in Europe for more than 10 years, more than a decade now, and I often see that employees are retained for the wrong purposes. Employees are retained because management fears that they hold all the knowledge. We should do something about this. And the answer is knowledge architecture. One of the greatest risks in high technology environment organizations is that knowledge remains trapped inside individuals or isolated departments. As engineers retire, change roles, or move to competitors, value expertise can disappear, or at least they are feared to disappear. The wheel had to be invented again. It happens sometimes, quite a lot of times actually. A centralized enterprise knowledge system transforms market knowledge, design knowledge, supplier knowledge, and manufacturing knowledge and service knowledge into strategic assets that remain inside the company. This becomes especially valuable as Hanmi grows internationally. The fifth layer is acquisition architecture. You need this because at one point you have to think about acquisition. It's not practical to not think about it. And this is where the framework becomes particularly relevant to investors and M&A firms, the mergers and acquisition firms. If Han acquires a technology company, partners with a software company, invests in a startup, or expands into a new region, integration becomes dramatically easier when there are common processes, common data models, common governance structures, common KPIs, and common development methodologies. In other words, acquisitions become repeatable rather than disruptive. And when we look at the outcomes, something important emerges. The goal is not architecture for architecture's sake. The goal is faster innovation, faster time to market, higher customer loyalty, recurring revenue streams, ecosystem lock-in, operational excellence, and ultimately higher enterprise value. Because in the semiconductor industry, future market leaders will not simply be the companies with the best machines. They will be the companies that successfully connect strategy, technology, operations, knowledge, partnerships, and acquisitions into a single scalable operating model, as shown here. So the message here is not that Hanmi needs to change everything tomorrow. The message is that every strategic move creates organizational consequences. If Hanmi chooses to become an intelligence company, the organization must support intelligence. If Hanmi chooses to become an ecosystem leader, the organization must grow accordingly. If Han chooses to become a more valuable acquisition target, acquisition platform, or global technology leader, the operating model must evolve accordingly. You have to present yourself in that manner. So this enterprise architecture framework is simply one example of how the organization could evolve to support the strategic future we have discussed throughout this presentation. Technology strategy creates opportunity. Enterprise architecture creates execution. When both evolve together, long-term competitive advantage becomes much more difficult for competitors to replicate. The previous slide introduced a possible enterprise architecture framework that aligns Hanmi's long-term strategy with value creation, innovation, and enterprise growth. But an enterprise architecture only becomes valuable when information can flow efficiently between all of these layers. That raises an important question. How do we connect strategy, engineering, suppliers, manufacturing, customers, and future product development into one operational model? My answer would be to use the V model. Traditionally, the V model has been used within engineering organizations to connect requirements, design, development, verification, and validation activities. But for a company like Hanmi, the V model can become something much larger. It can become the operational backbone that connects every layer of the enterprise architecture we discussed earlier. At the very top of the model, very top, we begin with strategic intent. That's where Hanmi's leadership team defines future objectives. For example, leadership in HBM and hybrid bonding. As an example, expansion into chiplets and co-packaged optics, manufacturing intelligence platforms, packaging ecosystem leadership, new customer segments, and geographic expansion. Those strategic objectives then flow into portfolio management. This is where platforms such as PlanView become extremely valuable. PlanView can connect strategic initiatives directly to investment portfolios, technology roadmaps, innovation programs, supplier development activities, and product portfolios. In other words, executives can see how strategic decisions translate into actual work being performed throughout the organization. From there, those objectives become system concepts and requirements. Engineering teams define performance targets, throughput requirements, yield goals, reliability objectives, software capabilities, inspection requirements, and manufacturing constraints. This is where platforms such as Jira, Polarian, Teamcenter, Siemens Accelerator can connect requirements directly to development activities. What happens when the executives and system architects do this? Every requirement becomes traceable. Every engineering task becomes linked to a strategic objective. Every design decision becomes connected to a customer need. Every development progresses. Module teams, software teams, automation teams, optics teams, supplier organizations all contribute to execution. Jira can manage daily engineering work. PlanView can manage cross-functional programs. PLM systems can manage product knowledge. ERP systems such as SAP can manage procurement, manufacturing, and supply chain execution. Instead of operating as separate silos, they become part of a connected digital thread. The V model, as you see, focuses on verification and validation. Individual modules are tested. That's on the right side, actually, on the upper side. Individual modules are tested. Integrated systems are verified. Manufacturing processes are validated. Customer acceptance is confirmed. Most companies stop here, but the real value emerges when the information flows back upward. Customer escalations, yield performance, field service data, equipment utilization, market trends, competitive intelligence. All of this information is captured and connected back to requirements, designs, roadmaps, strategic objectives for the next line of machines or the next line of intelligence systems. Now the organization begins to learn as a system. And this is where enterprise architecture and the V model becomes inseparable. The enterprise architecture defines the capabilities Hanmi wants to build. The V model defines how information moves between those capabilities. Together, they create a closed-loop innovation system where strategy influences engineering, engineering influences manufacturing, manufacturing influences customers, and customer insights continuously influence future strategy. For investors and potential acquisition partners, this is gold. This is a system that works. This is a well-oiled machine. If you are able to demonstrate at least 5 years of unhindered results, it's gold for the acquisition leaders. It's gold. It reduces dependence on individual experts. It accelerates onboarding of new teams. It simplifies acquisition integration. It improves traceability, it strengthens governance, and most importantly, it creates an organization capable of scaling globally without losing knowledge or execution quality. The result is not simply better packaging. The result is a learning organization where every customer installation, every supplier interaction, every engineering project, every market signal continuously increases the value of the enterprise itself. Before we conclude, I would like to leave you with 3 simple messages. The first is transparency. No sponsorship, funding, or commercial agreement has been accepted from any company mentioned in this video. Every observation, recommendation, and strategic idea presented here is based solely on publicly available information, industry experience, and independent analysis by yours truly. The second is value and purpose. This video is not intended to be a sales presentation. It is intended to demonstrate a way of thinking. The Silk Road of Systems was created around a simple idea that significant value can be created when companies, suppliers, technologies, and regions that normally operate separately are connected through a common strategic architecture. Whether the discussion involves semiconductor packaging, aerospace systems, automotives, or medical devices, energy infrastructure, industrial technology, the principle remains the same. The right ecosystem often creates more value than any individual company can create alone. And finally, let's connect.